Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Day with Trae, an evening special. I get to spend some time with some amazing folks from the Seattle Opera and specifically from X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. I'm so excited because tonight we have Anthony Davis in the building, the composer of this phenomenal opera. We also will be speaking to Kenneth Kellogg, who plays Malcolm X. We also have Leah Hawkins in the building, who plays Louise and Betty. So you get to see her multiple roles in this amazing production. And we have Ibidunni Ojikutu also joining us, who is a part of the ensemble and a local Seattle area resident. So we're so excited that we have a plethora of folks from this phenomenal production that we'll be speaking to today on this evening special. I want to thank you all for joining us and watching as we get some specific insight from these amazing folks about why you need to be seeing this show and some of the background as to how this show got to be. So I get to start off with my first question and welcoming the panel. Welcome, all of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, mics. There you go. Yeah. Glad to have you all with me today. And thanks so much for giving us some of your time. I know rehearsal schedule is very intense, so thank you so much. I got to start with you, Mr. Davis. I mean, you are known as the Black Dean of Opera. And reading up on you, you've really allowed for your talent to be a part of so many different productions. But this is one that you wrote in the 80s. And so I want to hear about the beginnings of this opera specifically. What made you say, I need to bring Malcolm X's life to the stage in the opera? Tell us more.
Well, it's a long story. My brother was in a play called El Hajj Malik, and he played the role of Malcolm X in the play. And so I went backstage to greet him after his performance, and he said, well, you know, the autobiography has so many references to music in it. You know, and maybe it would be great to do a musical about Malcolm X because you could basically tell the history of jazz from 1940s to 1960s through Malcolm's story, and it mirrors Malcolm's story. And I thought about it. I said, well, he's really a tragic hero. I think it's an opera. It's an opera, but so some of the ideas of the music evolve as the music evolves in terms of the evolution of jazz from the late 40s to the 60s is in the opera. It's embedded in some of the opera, but at the same time, I had to find more unifying themes that would work so it would tell his story.
Yeah, well, this is something I think a lot of folks are trying to figure out right now. I mean, this specific opera is buzzing in Black community. I can tell you that. And lots of folks are like, what are we going to expect? And so that kind of brings me to you, Kenneth. I mean, when you think about playing this iconic role, I've been able to interview you before, but this is a role that is actually known by folks, right? Unlike some of the other roles you may have really portrayed. Tell us a bit about how you're taking on this icon of Malcolm X in this role.
Yeah, it's different playing an imaginary character versus a character we all think we know. And it's that part that we think we know that really intrigues me about playing Malcolm X. We all know what the media has portrayed, what history has portrayed, but what I try to find in Malcolm X, or El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, is the humanity that we don't really know. He went through a lot in life, and there was a lot that shaped Malcolm X, who he became. So the way I approached playing this icon was to not make him iconic, but make him human. And it became important to find those moments, those tender moments between Betty and Malcolm, which we don't really get to see portrayed in the media much. So I try to portray the man and not the icon.
Yeah, that's actually really huge. And I'm sure there's some personal nodes that you get to bring in to it when you take it from that perspective. So thank you for sharing that. I'll come to you too, Leah, because when we think about, Betty, I mean, there hasn't been a ton of, speculation necessarily about her. I think a lot of folks have these ideas. We kind of heard and we've seen movies and we've read books. But tell us a bit about how you're taking on, this role from maybe addressing what some of the folks think they know, as kind of Kenneth said. How are you actually utilizing your skills to bring her to life?
Well, when I did it in the fall in New York, I watched so many videos of her because I wanted to sort of get her essence. And then I remember I went to the administration at the Met and I said, I'd really like to meet one of her daughters. Like, I want to meet someone who was connected to her because I think that's what will connect the dots for me. And so I got to meet her third daughter, Ilyasa Shabazz, who will be here, I think, shortly. And she was the one who gave me some insight into her mother about how sensual she was, how feminine she was. It helped me find her because I like you said, we think we know these people and we have no idea who they are, and we get a glimpse of who they are through videos. But to meet her daughter and have her daughter say, "You look like my mother and you remind me of my mother," that really helped me find who she was, for me at least.
Well, I'll say, that's got to take on its own kind of node. I mean, we talk about actors doing method acting, right? And what it means to get into character. And it's great that you had that opportunity to connect with her and really find some of those nuances that you're able to really portray, but also kind of get that confirmation, even like saying, you look like my mom, right? Like that's a huge node to, you being in this role. So thank you for sharing that. Ibi, I get to come to you because as someone who's, local here to the area and gets to be a part of this really iconic opera with this amazing cast. Tell us about how, that is resonating with you as a part of the ensemble.
It's really fantastic. It's a huge story that needs to be told. Malcolm has such a reach throughout the country. There are people here who I didn't realize how much Black history, I think, was in Seattle. There's so many Langston Hughes. There's so many people who know these figures. And being able to be part of it and tell people you need to come and see this is a huge thing because there are so many parts of the story we don't know. He was a baby. He was a child, and you don't see that. And we only see the fiery Malcolm, And towards the end of his life, when he maybe settled a little bit and his philosophy started changing, and the way this opera tells that story is just amazing. It's just amazing. And it's a privilege to be part of it, honestly.
Yeah, well, see, hearing it from y'all, there's even more of a reason to be here. But I want to go back a little bit to the beginning here because this is not the first time that this is doing a run. So I want to talk about that very first run in the 80s. Tell us about how it was received back then. Give us a little glimpse into that time frame.
Well, it premiered at New York City Opera in 1986. And I was actually sold out for every performance. It was a huge success. It was the I guess the most popular new opera ever done at New York City Opera in its history. And what was interesting is they had buses coming from Harlem to Lincoln Center, and so I remember opening night was 50% African American house in Lincoln Center, which is unprecedented, and so it was very exciting. It's very exciting also because Betty Shabazz was alive. So I met with Betty before the opera opened, and so that was an incredible experience to get to know her and have her come, and her daughters came. I knew Attila, the oldest daughter, was a friend of mine, so I knew her, and so that was a really exciting part of it, and. So, and it was also, and think about that time, it was Jesse Jackson ran for president in 84. So this is 86. So fresh in the minds and people in New York were Farrakhan, and Farrakhan was provided the security for Jesse Jackson, and so there was a kind of a little more controversial then about and sort of the confusion of equating Farrakhan with Malcolm X. So that was really interesting, and I learned a lot from Attila and the members of the family about that. So it was very exciting time.
Wow, I mean, those are some amazing numbers. I mean, you're talking about 50% African American folks in the audience. That speaks huge volumes. I know Seattle Opera is doing a lot of work to make sure that this is promoted widely so folks in the community know to be here. But that's a beautiful even scene that you just set for me. So thank you for sharing that. And Kenneth, this is one of those things where you always, I think, from every role that you play, you're learning more and more about yourself as an opera singer, as a performer. Tell us more about some of the ways that this role is impacting some of that learning and growth of your own, personal plethora of skill set.
I can address that on multiple fronts. This is probably one of the most difficult operas I've ever had to learn. It's from just a physical standpoint, it's a very physical role. Emotionally, it's difficult. To think about putting yourself in the shoes of such a figure who had to deal with so much and fight for Black people in this country. Just his growth, realizing his journey from being a child to being lost in prison, to being found in the Nation of Islam, to realizing that the Nation of Islam wasn't for him, and then becoming a citizen of the world. As a Black man in this country and as an artist, the parallels of finding oneself in a situation and in a circumstances that isn't built for you, the level of growth on both levels. I identify with that journey of finding oneself in life and as a Black man in opera. That's one aspect. And then realizing the history of Malcolm's life. We talk about, we didn't have the Black Lives Matter movement back then, but that's all Malcolm stood for. In a very harsh environment, where he could literally be killed for speaking what he spoke. We are dealing with very similar things today. So identifying with him in that fight and our current fight for Black Lives Matter is a huge level of growth, and his savvy of how to deal with that on the national stage and on the world stage. It requires you to grow and think beyond oneself.
Yeah, I can only imagine, right? I connect to all of you as a thespian kid myself, right? Just being on stage and what it means to be able to take from every role that I was in, just my own personal experience, to then realizing that it was showing me some things about myself, especially through that characterization. So that's really great to hear that too, that there's always going to be those nodes. Leah, when you think about some of the ways that this role is impacting kind of your pedigree of roles that you've played, tell us how this stands out and maybe some of those things that you're taking away as well.
These roles have really stretched me as an artist and an actress. They were real women. And so there's a certain level of respect that I want to bring to them. And so in bringing that respect, I take them on in a different way than I do other characters. And so I have to really fight myself not to go there truly. Like I walk off stage and I say, this is not real. This is not real. That is not my story or my experience. I have to do that every time I walk off stage because it's easy to take that on because of the reverence that I have for these women.
Yeah, and quickly too, the difference of playing Louise and Betty, how do you switch it up and make it different and give that different experience to the audience?
Well, when we see Louise in the opera, she's already coming undone, right? So we don't really get to see who she was before then. And so I think that's part of the difficulty for me is because there's no resolution, right? You come in, she's going nuts, and then that's it, right? And so then you switch over to Betty, and I can finally be grounded and be centered in who I am. To get sort of spooky, I think of Louise as like heart chakra, and then I think of Betty as root chakra, right? So more grounded and centered.
That's a great way of putting it. And I'm with it. I definitely, now you've painted a full picture for me. So thank you for sharing that. Ibi, ensembles are always such a major part of any opera. We have main characters, they're doing all these things, but I think the audience really resonates with the continuity that the ensemble can bring. Can you tell us more about how being a part of that is really helping to kind of cement the story in certain ways that are bringing the audience along?
It's really interesting because Anthony has managed to make us both individual characters and like a Greek chorus. So in the beginning of both acts, we come in and we're very much a community, but we're individual characters. And then there are these amazing scenes. There are parts that I sing where I'm like, okay, you're not a singer, you're a trumpet, where we're clearly, part of the orchestra and we're a Greek chorus and there's this amazing interaction happening in front of us, but we're straight ahead and we're setting the scene and we're just part of, the rhythm section. We're commenting on the action that's happening and like setting, the scene while the dialogue is happening in front of us. And it's really fantastic. And I honestly think that probably the Greek chorus parts are maybe my favorite because there's like a dreamy one. And then there's a really kind of percussive, like syncopated one. And there are just these beautiful, beautiful moments. And you don't really get it until it's with the orchestra. And so it's just amazing to be able to kind of help switch the mood the way it happened. The way we change as Malcolm changes is just mind-blowing as well.
Yeah, who would have known? So this is another piece why I'm so glad that all of you are here, because we're getting a full breadth of what the audience can expect from this amazing show. Y'all, we're already starting off on a really great foot here, and I'm so excited again to have all of these amazing folks in the building with me. We're going to be following up with some more questions and diving a little deeper right after this short break, y'all. Stay tuned. You're watching The Day with Trae, an evening special.
Seattle Opera presents X, the life and times of Malcolm X. The story of one of the most misunderstood figures in U.S. history comes to McCall Hall for an exceptional night at the opera. Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Anthony Davis produces an American classic with influences from classical music, jazz, pop, blues, and more. Don't miss X, the life and times of Malcolm X, February 24th through March 9th at McCall Hall. Details at seattleopera.org.
So today, we had the pleasure of bringing our entire Elite Collective crew. We are here to provide all of your AV solutions. That's audio, video, live streams. We got photo booth activations, event recap, photography. Hit us up at theelitecollective.com. You can check out our socials below. Connect with us, ask us questions. We're here to help you build. If we can't do it, we probably know someone that can. Hit us up. We love connecting with community. We're based out of Pacific Northwest. Holla.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Day with Trae, an evening special with the Seattle Opera and X, the life and times of Malcolm X. I get to dive right back into this amazing discussion with these phenomenal folks here. I really want to kind of go to something that for me is an inspiration, and it is the Blackness of it all, right? I want to talk about that a bit here because that is something that I think a lot of folks in community are already talking about. People are getting their outfits together. Y'all know this is like, it's an homage to, how our elders and folks in our community used to dress up to go for that night out. That's what people are looking forward to. And so I want to talk to you all about how excited you are to be bringing something to community that allows for that to happen. I'm sure that was a part of the original when this first came out in New York. People showed up and showed out, but tell us about how, you now know a piece of your work is continuing that and giving folks a reason to come to the opera. Tell us more.
No, that's very exciting. I mean, at the Met, I was very excited. Like we had with the Afrofuturist approach that Robert O'Hara had to the production. I have to say that we had this incredible costume, but at the same time, the costumes, what people wore to the opening, oh my God! I mean, that they were really showing. I mean, it was really like it was like kind of Black Panther come to life. It was unbelievable, and so it was very exciting to me, and I think it's meaningful for me that the piece could be such in a way show our pride in our history and pride in our heroes and that we celebrate together. and a way we can celebrate together an incredible life and journey of a person who transformed our world.
Yeah, that says a lot. Kenneth, you've done roles here in Seattle before, but this is going to be a bit different. I just want to hear how that's resonating with you, because this is going to be different.
It's different, yeah. It makes me think of Malcolm's journey. We often think of Malcolm as suit, Muslim, bowler hat, but Malcolm was a pimp. Malcolm was a player. He sold drugs. He was from the streets. And there's an amazing scene where he puts on this zoot suit, and when I put it on, it's like a certain swag. You just have to walk. You have to walk a certain way in that suit, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see. So I also try to bring that to Malcolm on the stage. He's from the streets. He was in the jazz clubs. He was a great dancer. He was a singer. He had a certain swag that I think we often forget.
Yeah, that's important. I think folks are going to be looking for that. So I'm glad that there's some elements there where we can really sink our teeth into that. Leah, when we think about just kind of the nature of Black folks coming to the opera, feeling like they actually have a reason because of something that you're a part of. Tell us about your response to that.
Oh, it's just so exciting. I love seeing Black folks get dressed up to come to the opera. Like no one gets to puts an outfit together like Black folks do. And I had patron friends who were coming to me afterwards like, oh my God, the outfits in the audience were amazing. And they were like, the excitement in the audience was amazing. It was so different. The way it sold at the Met was exciting. To see that house full, you don't see it full for everything. When I went to I went to see it in Detroit because I knew I was going to do it and I wanted to see it. And Detroit Opera had their first sold out show in 10 years because of X. And most of the house was Black. And like that's what this can do. That's what bringing these kinds of stories to the stage can do for opera and for theater.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, for me, Ibi, there's something special about Seattle Blackness coming, through. This is folks from King County, Pierce County, Snohomish County, folks in Western Washington. I think I'll say all of Washington are really excited about this. But as a local, resident here, just give us a little bit of the difference and maybe some of the ways that you may experience the difference based on maybe some of the other roles that you've played. It's not going to be quite the same.
So my friends and I coined this term, the SeaTac Black, a couple weeks ago. And it is just all of the Black people in the area, and they are going to show up and show out. Everyone that I've told or that I've mentioned, like, oh, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm doing X, Life and Times Malcolm X. Wait, what? Yeah, it's an opera about Malcolm X. Make a note of that. When is it? I need to know. I can't wait to come and see it. We are a community that is driven by art. Everything, our stories are told through art. And the opportunity to see one of our stories, and it's not just pure tragedy and trauma, on a big stage. They say the Seattle Opera. Not I'm going to the opera, it's gonna be at the Seattle Opera, is a huge deal. We want to go and see things. We bring our children to these things. So there are gonna be kids in the audience that are gonna look up and see Kenneth or see Leah like I did, when my mom took me to see Leontine and think, oh, I could do that one day. Or, oh, I wanna learn more about this person. And so it's a form of church, I think. People go to see other Black people because we're kind of far. We're not like we are in Detroit here, but you go and you see other people. It's an excuse to dress up. It's an excuse to bring your children. You talk about what you saw on the way home. It's a really, really big deal. And there are going to be people who come multiple times because Seattle Opera is being kind of the only, house in the area that is capable of doing something like this. You have a fear that it's going to be, few and far between. So you want to be there in the room for that moment in history, and it's gonna be historic. I'm blown away every day, and so as a local, I cannot wait for the pictures to show up on social media, and I was there.
Absolutely. We all really get to participate in this journey. And to be honest, we already understand the just kind of iconic nature of it and really the depth that it's bringing to this area specifically. I want to ask you, Mr. Davis, how this show is different than maybe some of the other works you've done throughout your career. Give us some of those differences and what makes this one maybe a little bit special. I don't want to put that in your mouth, but maybe a little special.
No, it is special. This was my first opera, which is interesting because this is the first opera I ever composed. So it was like learning on the job when I was writing it.
Wow.
And it was very exciting. It was very exciting to me. It was discovery. I was discovering what the possibilities of the art form, and also with such the responsibility also of telling the story, telling Malcolm's story, and it was thrilling for me because also I felt an incredible energy when I was creating it because of just thinking about Malcolm and thinking about how we could bring this to the stage, and it was also about how we could bring different music to opera, bring the music that Malcolm loved. He loved jazz, loved the music, and musicians loved him. I knew so many musicians who knew him. Some of my mentors, like Max Roach was a mentor for me, and he was very close to Malcolm. So I knew that he was very much a part of the music. What the emergence of the music in the '60s of Coltrane and Miles in the '60s, and Sonny Rollins and Max Roach. I could just go on and on. But that was a musical inspiration for me too. That arrival, that was what inspired me to become a musician.
Wow. So much depth there too, because when you think about having close proximity to folks who knew Malcolm while you're working on a show like this, says a lot about the things that you were able to kind of derivatives that you were able to create and like bring into the work itself. So it's great to hear that. And it makes me really want to talk about the music here with all of you. We know y'all do this, right? Opera is no joke. You have to train very hard in order for you to get to these main stages. You're already put so much work in. Tell us a bit about the difference of the music that is in this show versus maybe other things you've experienced throughout your career. Go ahead, Kenneth.
Oh, that is a hard question. The composer sitting right here. I will say, it's challenging. I think part of that jazz element is, there's a freedom that goes along with it, and writing that down is difficult. The meter changes. It's no secret. The meter changes in this opera are mind-blowing. So there's a lot of counting. There's a lot of finding the groove. And I think that's our job as artists and musicians, is finding the groove of the composer. And everyone feels things very different. So finding how you fit into the composer's groove is really important. And because the styles, in this piece, listening to different styles that were influential in the writing of the piece, they all have different grooves. And you have to find your way. In every scene, there's a different groove. There's a prayer scene that's really solemn, and the groove is easy. And then there's a scene where Malcolm is, you look at the videos of him, and he's just, his eloquence in what he's saying and the venom which he's saying with, it's in the music, and you have to find that. So it's difficult. It's difficult sometimes, but it's also very rewarding when you find it.
How are those challenges resonating with you, Leah, when you think about the differences of, the music here versus some of the other roles you portrayed?
Actually, funny enough, one of my good friends, a soprano, Whitney Morrison, and I were in New York, and she went up to Anthony and was like, "Listen, Anthony, we love you. We love this music. Why you do us like that?" It's just the most rhythmically challenging piece I've ever done. And so in the beginning, I was counting with my entire body. I was using my entire body to tell this story. And so I think that's why I was so exhausted doing it in the beginning, because it takes all of your focus. you know. But it makes sense for these kinds of characters that it would take everything that you have in order to do them. So it's a challenge, but it's one that I accept wholeheartedly. So, thank you.
Absolutely.
And she rises to it too.
There we go. We rises to the occasion. Amazing. For you, EB, clearly, I mean, you talked about the differences of the ensemble and the ways that y'all have to switch your style up. When you think about some of the ways that, you know, this stands outside of, or maybe, you know, above maybe even some of the other roles that you've played, how has that resonated with you in your career?
It's wildly different. Like they said, it is no secret that Maestro Davis's music is incredibly difficult to learn. Myself and Elena Lewis, the other soprano, are the only two new members of the ensemble. So we came in with people who knew what they were doing, which is great. It's really hard to learn on your own. You have to have all of the other pieces of the puzzle. So when that Met broadcast happened, I was there with my voice teacher sitting right next to me with my score in the theater. Oh, that's the way it happens. It's not something that I could, you know, get a study recording made or watch, you know, it's not 100 or 200 years old. I can't just find a couple of recordings and hear how it fits in the structure. But it is so incredibly, I'm not gonna lie, there are moments where I'm on stage and I'm looking serene and I'm literally like squeezing my prop or whatever because I'm counting. Like if you can see these little chubby fingers, you will see like 1, 2, 3, 1. That's me counting. But it is also, I have discovered parts of my voice I didn't know were there. There's an extension in there that I didn't realize until my castmates were like, oh yeah, that's in there, you know. Because I have to. You have no choice. Maestro Davis's music is demanding and unrelenting, but also so incredibly rewarding. So it is hands down. I've sung Central Park 5, which is difficult in other ways, but the music is incredibly demanding, but it also teaches you that if you can learn this, I don't mean survive it, because you live it, you can learn anything. It's kind of the pinnacle of, oh yeah, I can learn. I'm not worried about that because I made it through this, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sets a different standard. I mean, that's what I'm hearing you all share, really. It sets a different standard. And it's interesting because when you talk about it being your first opera and learning on the job, clearly you were like, look, I'm outside the box. I don't have to fit within the boxes of like what, you know, other composers have done, which sounds like what all of you are experiencing. You know, we talked about how, you know, it started in '86, right, and at the New York Met. I want to hear from you all, like, why now? Why is it coming back around? The interest now, you know, this is being, you know, shown in different cities across the country. Tell us a bit about why this is significant maybe now and what brought it back. Folks want to know.
Well, I think we've had a kind of a reawakening to, you know, what was, and a lot of the arts institution had to confront the fact that how systematic racism works in our country and works in the arts. And I think, you know, with what happened with George Floyd, really started to make to create an action in which, you know, these companies and arts institutions had to really wrestle with the fact, you know, of dealing with what the potential and what Black art can be. Yeah. And then I think, you know, when they did Terrence's opera at the Met and then mine, I think it's opened the doors for that, and to see the success that those operas have had, you know, that we were able to bring in a new audience, a younger audience too. I mean, I remember the Met told me that at X that the 60% of the house at the Met was under 40. Wow. Which was really unprecedented for the Met, and so but to think that, you know, what this is an opportunity to make opera more accessible and more and realize that we all can participate in this great art form, and that it can also serve like serve the whole community, not just one segment of the community. And I think that's really important for the future of the arts in America, future of the art form, future of opera. You know, that works can be created that will bring in audience, that will bring in new people that will to appreciate this wonderful art form.
Well, absolutely, right? And for me, that's the exciting part, because when I started coming to the opera, you know, the folks here can tell you, I was like, okay, first thing I saw was blue. And so then I was like, well, can we do more of it? Like, where am I going to see more Black folks, you know, or more Black stories being told in this art form? And so that brings me to kind of my question to you all in terms of, you know, the push that you all get to make as, you know, opera singers and performers in this art form to really push the needle and to get, you know, more institutions to understand the need for, you know, different stories to be showcased through this art form. Tell us about maybe some of the ways that you can do that as on the performer side.
Take that one first.
You know, I'm not sure that I have ideas as much as I've been saying this, and I will continue shouting it from the rooftop, is that ideally that telling these stories will be something that is so normal to us, that it's not a big to-do, that it's not something that we have to make a big fuss about, that like we are so used to seeing this on stage that it's like, oh, I want to see the Black stories, I want to see the Hispanic stories, the Asian stories, Pacific Islanders, whatever. I want to see all kinds of stories on stage, and I want people to be used to it.
Yeah.
So I did a Bohème in New York last year, and a group of Black people came to see Bohème because they saw a Black person was in it.
Yeah.
So like ideally we're going to see our traditional works because you're seeing the casting reflecting our world, and reflecting your own community. So for me, I've been Black my whole life, right? And it's something I've been so proud of. And it's not something that I have to say, I'm a Black woman. Like you see it as I walk down the street every day. And so I want to feel I am normal, and I want everyone else to feel that too.
Yeah.
And not only that, I would say another thing, not only have we been Black our whole lives, we've been artists as well. We have the same training as everybody else. So we're not just artists January 15th through the end of February, you know. It's not just performers. There are so many composers, so many young administrators that are coming up. And I see, you know, I work too, but I see, you know, like Leah and Kenneth and artists of a much higher caliber than me working to elevate those people, you know, and elevate their works so that their works become part of just the regular, normal things that are being performed. I can think of maybe 5 or 6 young Black composers right now whose names I hear come up all the time. And that is amazing because I want to see them performed as much as Brahms, as much as Schubert, you know? And another thing is that I'm seeing where we are not so desperate for work. We are creating our own opportunities. So we don't have to accept those pieces or those things that don't make us feel great and don't make us feel like artists, that make us just feel like bodies. And that is a massive power. That choice is a huge power. And I'm here for it and I love it and I cannot wait to see how much power we gain.
I will jump in. And I didn't want to go there, but since we're going there. No, personally, I mean, I understand the need for the term Black opera, but I personally don't agree with it, and I personally hate it. Mm-hmm. Because stating it simply puts it on the side, as this is Black opera, which separates it from opera. And it's opera, we're telling stories. It's not something that's totally different because it's simply, you know, telling a story of a certain people. So to Leah's point, I would love to simply just have this conversation about opera and the stories that are told. it drives me insane when I see a production at a company and they promote the two leads as, oh, these two black leads are changing opera. Really? They're just simply doing their jobs and telling their story. The fact that they're black is special, but it shouldn't be special because they are performing at the caliber of any other opera singer, black, white, yellow, brown. They are simply doing their jobs and being great artists. The fact that they're black doesn't really matter. And to the effect of it just being people telling stories, every opera talks about, and we talked about this before, every opera talks about the human condition. And to separate black people from that human condition does us a disservice. We've been in this era of, black operas being told. And I warned the general directors, like, we're creating a situation where only black singers are going to be able to do these roles. So you shut the door and you pigeonhole us further. And now, no less than 5 months after I had that conversation with her, I had to choose between two roles at two A-level houses. The roles I had to choose between was a servant of a president in the South, a slave, and literally the title role was a shackled man in another opera. And for me, it killed my soul because I have to work, but I saw the detriment of doing these stories about black trauma and these stories about black opera. I saw what it was going to do. I see the future of what it's going to do for black singers, and it does not look good.
This is so powerful, y'all. I mean, honestly, because without your insight and your perspective, there'd be so much more speculation about it, right? And then the idea of that kind of pigeonholing is a whole nother topic to dive more into. So I really appreciate y'all for really coming through from a personal perspective about how you really see this. And I'll say this too, that I think it's like with theater or any other ballet, opera, whatever, at the end of the day, it's all storytelling. And we do talk about it like that. But I think there's so many people who get, I guess, in a sense, they are looking for stories that represent their lived experience. And when they're few and far between, they're less likely to attend, right? And so I think there's a lot of art houses that are looking to be like, well, how do we diversify our storytelling, which is exactly what you're saying here, right? Is that there's a need to be able to showcase stories that bring people to it, because not only is it the young person who may see themselves and say, oh my gosh, I could be Leah one day, I could be Kenneth, now because I have an actual example of it, but there's also all age brackets who get inspired by the fact that, man, now our stories are great enough to be told at this level, especially when you look at the history of exclusion. So I love diving into this, and I'm sure we could talk more about it. So I appreciate all of that realness here. Y'all, we're going to continue this realness because we are going to have another short commercial break. And when we come back, we're going to be wrapping up some more reasons why you need to be getting your tickets to X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, right after this. Y'all stay tuned.
Seattle Opera presents X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. The story of one of the most misunderstood figures in U.S. history comes to McCall Hall for an exceptional night at the opera. Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Anthony Davis produces an American classic with influences from classical music, jazz, pop, blues, and more. Don't miss X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, February 24th through March 9th at McCall Hall. Details at seattleopera.org.
So today, we had the pleasure of bringing our entire Elite Collective crew. We are here to provide all of your AV solutions. That's audio, video, live stream. We got photo booth activations, event recap, photography. Hit us up at theelitecollective.com. You can check out our socials below. Connect with us, ask us questions. We're here to help you build. If we can't do it, we probably know someone that can. Hit us up. We love connecting with community. We're based out of Pacific Northwest. Holla.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Day with Trae, an evening special, Seattle Opera X, the life and times of Malcolm X. Y'all, we have been having such a great discussion here, and we are diving into some really deep topics around not only the art form of opera, but what it means to be bringing different stories to the opera. And so I think about the future, and I just want to ask you all about kind of the future of opera from your perspective. You know, when we have more and more composers who are reflecting the different, you know, ethnic backgrounds and races that our country has and that the world has. Inevitably, more of these kinds of stories will be told. Tell us about some of the things that you're looking forward to when it comes to kind of the future of opera. I'll start with you, Mr. Davis.
Well, I'm very excited in telling different kinds of storytelling. I mean, I've written an opera, Amistad, which is about the slave rebellion, and that was exciting to me because of this because the you know when the Amistad rebellion and the origins of what our culture is coming out of slavery. So that's always very fascinating to me. And I also did an opera about Native American story with a trial of standing bearer called Wakanda's Dream. So, but I think there's so many great stories to be told, and I look to the future. I have a political bent in my work, and I'm sort of continuing with that. I'm working on an opera now called Pancho Rabbit and the Coyote, which is about the border of Mexico and the United States, and so I'm very interested in exploring that as a children's opera with animal characters, kind of like Animal Farm or Cunning Little Vixen, but also there'll be probably an orange snapping turtle who's building a wall as part of in the opera, but that's fun for me. I like the idea of playing with things that resonate today. And I don't worry that much about tomorrow. I think that those. I mean, I think in a way it's similar to what Verdi thinking about the Risorgimento or something in Italy. In the 1860s. So I think that we have to be of our time and speak to our time in order to speak to the future. Yeah. And that's sort of my position on it.
Yeah. Well, and they also create iconic pieces that people want to always bring back. I mean, I think about some of the operas I've seen, they were written so long ago, right? They are just such classics, but they keep showing up, right? In the repertoire of what's being shown because people keep wanting to see these stories. So I love hearing you say that. Kenneth, when you think about some of the things that, is exciting for you as being someone who's in this art form now, some of the things that you're kind of seeing trending out there, what are some of those things for you?
I think diversity is only an asset. With as many voices you have in the space, I think the more beauty there is. So I think the more we foster the education of composers in the tradition of opera, I think it only is an asset for the long term, for us as artists, for the long term. But to your point, the operas that we love have been around for a long time, and we continue to show them for a long time. And I'm a big proponent of the reason why they are continuously told and have been told for so long is because they speak to the humanity of everyone. They aren't separate, the stories aren't separate. They were told from a certain perspective and produced in a certain perspective. But I think we now recognize that producers can shape a piece in a very specific perspective that can speak to a variety of audiences. You can do Bohème. Could you imagine if you did Bohème simply in what you're dressed? It totally changed the aesthetic and understanding of who those people are and the humanity of those people. Simply the aesthetic of a piece and the approach of a director who has a very specific idea about who these people are. If you have a director, Denzel, he gives that perfect example of Martin Scorsese and who is it? Schindler's List and Goodfellas were the movies, and he talks about the cultural aspects of the directors and how, based on how they see things, it informs how an audience sees that particular piece. So I think the more we diversify who has the power to tell stories, we do ourselves a great service.
Yeah. Absolutely. Leah.
I have nothing to add to that.
you concur. Right on. Evie.
I look forward to seeing what these young composers come up with. While you guys are having your serious discussions at the front, the ensemble has had some fun discussions. Like, we would love a living single opera, some joy. Give me a comedy. We're real funny. Wakanda the opera. That would be gorgeous. But Kenneth is right. Just changing the perspective of the director is enough to update the story and make it resonate with more people. These operas that are, common in the canon, it's because, not just because the music is beautiful, but because people are like, oh, I love that part when X, Y, and Z happens. It makes them feel something. And there's so much out there now that people are saying and people are learning how to say. And I just look forward to seeing these stories get written and how they resonate with people, and to see operas for kids. And I remember my first opera, my godmother bought me Where the Wild Things Are to watch on video, and it was wild. It was amazing. But seeing stories told by people my age or younger, and having it actually reflect what we've lived, I think is going to be amazing, because I think there's going to be a whole lot of joy coming. We are trying to work past trauma. We're not just a trauma-ridden people. We have gone far past that. We always have. That's why we're still here. And I cannot wait to see what happens next.
Yeah. Lots of good notes here. And lastly, I got to give all of y'all time in the true Day with Trae fashion. We love to make sure the audience hears from all of you why they need to be here at X, Life and Times of Malcolm X. I'm going to go right down the line, but give us those few things that people, maybe they won't expect, maybe they do, but this is the reason that they need to be here. Mr. Davis.
Well, because I one of the things is to have an emotional experience, that music is emotional, and it plays to emotions, and to feel what Malcolm felt, to feel what was happening at the time, to feel the forces that were at play during his life. I mean, I think it's something that that will create, is an emotional experience. That's a very personal experience, and I hope they have a chance to have that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll go back to the opera. And the first thing Malcolm says in the opera is, "I will not tell you what I know." He's not here to tell us what he knows, but this opera speaks to his truth. And we think we know him, but I think this opera gives us more insight to Malcolm X, the icon, and El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, the man.
Thank you. Yeah.
Come to see a celebration of Blackness. Come to hear a Black man's music over top of Black women's words. Come to hear Black voices. Come to see costumes designed by a Black woman. Come to see a show directed by a Black man. Come to celebrate in all of the beautiful Blackness.
Yeah. 100%.
I don't know when you are going to get a chance to hear the caliber of singing that is happening in that room. There's not a weak person in the cast or in the orchestra. It is, people are singing down, and the show is stunning. So everybody needs to come to see it so that you can say that you saw it, and then come again, because you'll catch something new every time.
Yeah, I'm already trying to mark my calendar for when I'm coming back. So I just want to thank all of y'all for giving me some time and really giving the audience some personal perspective on not only the characters you're playing and portraying, but the reason why folks need to be attending the opera. That's really what this is about. So thank you so much, all of you, for spending some time with me today to shine a light on why folks need to be there at X, The Life and Times of X. Appreciate all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you. Y'all, this is what we're talking about here. I have been on a long time journey with Seattle Opera. I want to give a huge shout out to all of the partners there who have really helped to make this happen, but who also opened my eyes to the powerful art form of the opera. You know, I was not someone who ever attended the opera before Blue, and y'all have been on this journey with me as I've been exploring not only phenomenal opera singers and cast members who've come to the Day with Trae, but now to be right here in the Opera Center talking to this phenomenal panel about this amazing, as we heard, stunning show in X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, and why we all need to be there. Now, this for me is really where I get the opportunity to utilize this platform to elevate so many different voices that bring to life for all of you, not only reasons why you need to be attending, but why you need to understand the stories that are told in opera are stories we can all connect with, whether it's X, The Life and Times of X, or another story. Ultimately, you know, we have some phenomenal folks who are making these productions happen right here in the Pacific Northwest for your enjoyment. So I hope that you enjoyed the Day with Trae this evening special tonight, because I surely did. Y'all know I'm inspired by everything folks shared here tonight. Not only can you be inspired to be a part of the solution as they are in being folks who are telling these stories, but you can also be inspired to give opera a try. If you've never shown up at Seattle Opera right here at McCall Hall, you can definitely come on down for X, The Life and Times of X, and let it be the first opera that you get to experience so you understand the nature of these phenomenal talent of folks that are going to be hitting that stage. You do not want to miss it. And I'm going to just encourage you to show up and show out for the Pacific Northwest, because this is hitting other cities. We want to make a statement here up here in the PNW, and you get to be a part of that. So make sure you get your tickets and come and see this phenomenal show. Thanks again for joining me on this Day with Trae, an evening special.